I have had a great many birthdays in my time. I remember the first one very well, and I always think of it with indignation. Everything was so crude, unaesthetic, primeval. Nothing like this at all. No proper, appreciative preparation made, nothing really ready. Now, for a person born with high and delicate instincts, why, even the cradle wasn't whitewashed. Nothing ready at all. I hadn't any hair. I hadn't any teeth. I hadn't any clothes. I had to go to my first banquet just like that. Well, everybody came swarming in. It was the merest little bit of a village, hardly that, just a little hamlet in the backwoods of Missouri, where nothing ever happened, and the people were all interested, and they all came. They looked me over to see if there was anything fresh in my line. Why, nothing ever happened in that village. I was the only thing that had really happened there for months and months and months. And although I say it myself that shouldn't, I came the nearest to being a real event that had happened in that village in more than 2 years. Well, those people came. They came with that curiosity which is so provincial, with that frankness which also is so provincial, and they examined me all around and gave their opinion. Nobody asked them, and I shouldn't have minded if anybody had paid me a compliment, but nobody did. Their opinions were all just green with prejudice, and I feel those opinions to this day. Well, I stood that as long as... Well, I was born courteous, and I stood it to the limit. I stood it an hour, and then the worm turned. I was the worm. It was my turn to turn, and I turned. I knew very well the strength of my position. I knew that I was the only spotlessly pure and innocent person in that whole town, and I came out and said so. And they could not say a word. It was so true. They blushed. They were embarrassed. Well, that was the first after-dinner speech I ever made. I think it was after dinner. It's a long stretch between that first birthday speech and this one. That was my cradle song, and this is my swan song, I suppose. I'm used to swan songs. I have sung them several times. This is my 70th birthday, and I wonder if you all rise to the size of that proposition, realizing all the significance of that phrase, 70th birthday. The 70th birthday. It is the time of life when you arrive at a new and awful dignity, when you may throw aside the decent reserves which have oppressed you for a generation, and stand unafraid and unabashed upon your 7-terraced summit, and look down and teach, unrebuked. You can tell the world how you got there. It is what they all do. You shall never get tired of telling by what delicate arts and deep moralities you climbed up to that great place. You will explain the process and dwell on the particulars with senile rapture. I have been anxious to explain my own system this long time, and now at last I have the right. I have achieved my 70 years in the usual way, by sticking strictly to a scheme of life which would kill anybody else. Sounds like an exaggeration, but that is really the common rule for attaining to old age. When we examine the program of any of these garrulous old people, we always find that the habits which have preserved them would have decayed us, that the way of life which enabled them to live upon the property of the air so long, as Mr. Choate says, would have put us out of commission ahead of time. I will offer here as a sound maxim this, that we can't reach old age by another man's road. I will now teach, offering my way of life to whomsoever desires to commit suicide by the scheme which has enabled me to beat the doctor and the hangman for 70 years. Some of the details may sound untrue, but they are not. I am not here to deceive. I am here to teach. We have no permanent habits until we are 40. Then they begin to harden. Presently they petrify. Then business begins. Since 40, I have been regular about going to bed and getting up. And that is one of the main things. I have made it a rule to go to bed when there wasn't anybody left to sit up with. And I have made it a rule to get up when I had to. This has resulted in an unswerving regularity of irregularity. It has saved me sound, but it would injure another person. In the matter of diet, which is another main thing, I have been persistently strict in sticking to the things which didn't agree with me until one or the other of us got the best of it. Until lately, I got the best of it myself. But last spring, I stopped frolicking with mince pie after midnight. Up to then, I had always believed it wasn't loaded. For 30 years, I have taken coffee and bread at 8 in the morning and no bite nor sup until 7:30 in the evening, 11 hours. That is all right for me and is wholesome, because I have never had a headache in my life. But headachy people would not reach 70 comfortably by that road, and they would be foolish to try it. And I wish to urge upon you this, which I think is wisdom, that if you find you can't make 70 by any but an uncomfortable road, don't you go. When they take off the Pullman and retire you to the rancid smoker, put on your things, count your checks, and get out at the first way station where there's a cemetery.